So here with Tommy Breedlove and one of my good new-ish dear friends. Tommy and I met through a mutual podcast that we had been on, and you've been on, God, how many podcasts at this point?
I'm guessing hundreds, but I don't know. A lot.
Do you get tired of like telling the same thing?
I don't get tired of the content or the work. I get tired of the story. But people want to know the human behind the work. Right. So I don't mind it.
Yeah.
I've gotten a lot quicker at it though.
Yeah. Reducing it down. No. Which I do want to get into a little more of your story today.
Of course.
Because I love your story, and I've heard a lot of your podcasts and things like that, but I still have so many questions about it. And we've got Tommy's legendary book that is wonderful. If you look through my copy, there's all sorts of writing and underlining, and this is why we're here to dig into this. It's a USA Today and Wall Street Journal bestseller. So very, very excited about it.
New York Times, here we come.
That's right. We're just going to throw that out there right now. So before we get into your story, question. How long do you think it took you to be able to get to a place where you could even share it? So for a lot of people, like, owning your story is really hard. There's a lot of, for some, I know for me, it's taken a long time in some areas. There's a lot of shame that surrounds some of it, a lot of embarrassment. And then to be able to come out publicly, like, how long was that process for you, do you think?
So I went through a little bit of backstory as I went through my transition at 36, 37 years old. Still very embarrassed by my story, like you said. I think I told my story for the first time publicly post 40. Yeah. Just as a reference, as this recording, I'm 47. Yeah. Never looked better, by the way. But I think it was post 40, and I decided as a come out story to bring all of my friends together, and I've created a movement called Choose Goodness, which we don't have to go into today, but as the first launch of Choose Goodness, I had all of my friends come together and basically share who I am, the story, the trials, the tribulations, the overcoming, then the trials and tribulations, then the overcoming again. And so it was post 40, but it was well into the doing what I call the inner work, the mental game, the emotional game, the spiritual game, and as opposed to using my story to anchor me down, I finally started using it as a platform to stand on, because it does have taboo parts. It has stuff that I'm not proud of. It has a lot of things that I wish I would have done differently, and but it's made us who we are now, and that's why we get along so good. This is two broke human beings trying to serve the world. So.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. No,
that's why we're so good at what we do.
I know. Well, and I'll never forget the first time I shared my story. It was on, and I didn't even know I was going to do it. It was on just this random Instagram live, and in the middle of it, because I had written about it, I just hadn't publicly spoke about it. I was comfortable with it. In the middle of it, I was like, oh my God, I'm telling my story right now. And it was just like a little bit of a gut punch, but then, and maybe you can relate to this, but it's like the more you share, the less chance shame has an opportunity to creep in. Because shame breeds secrecy, right? So that's but you dropped a bomb, the Choose Goodness? Yeah. What's that?
It was a movement that is going to come back. It's going to be the philanthropic side of the Legendary Life movement. But it's about empowering people to know that the only true power they have is choice. Yeah. And you can choose darkness or you can choose light. Yep. You can choose evil or you can choose goodness. And so one of our give backs in the future will be for every man and woman that comes through the Legendary Life movement in some way, as part of Choose Goodness, is they're going to help younger people to know that there's always a choice, and you don't have to live in shame and fear and the not good enoughs and all that stuff. To where for every man and woman that we have in the movement, there's a young man and a young woman that's going to be served through the Choose Goodness, which will become a 501c3.
Awesome. Yeah. I can't wait for that.
Yeah, it's
That's
coming.
Exciting.
It's coming.
That's really, really cool. So
I've got a cool story though, because
Yeah.
you just reminded me of something that I've never actually. I mean, I shared it publicly there. I can't remember. I know I'm almost positive that my coming out. I can't remember the order of this, but I was asked to speak in an entrepreneurial at University of Georgia's business program, which is like as conservative as it gets. And they asked me to come in and talk about entrepreneurship, my movement, and inspire these 70 or 80 young people to. And I don't know what happened during that, but I went on this diatribe of my story. And I think it was the entire story, and it was toward the end.
Yeah.
Like one of these young people asked me something, and it just triggered.
Yeah.
And then when I realized the time was over, and I had just finished my story, and I believe it was the first time public. I really believe. But I remember looking up, and these 70 young people were just jaw dropped.
Yep.
And there was faculty, there was administrators in the room. No one said a word. And I was like, shit, I want to run out of this room.
Yeah. Yeah.
My wife is there.
Vulnerability, remorse.
Oh yeah. I mean, and my wife is there, and everybody's there. And finally, I just went, so are there any questions? I'm not kidding you. More than any other, and I do a lot of public speaking, a lot of keynoting. Mm-hmm. More than any other presentation, there was half the kids lined up on one side and lined up on the other side just to have a real conversation with an adult who had been through some shit.
Right.
So it's really cool.
Yeah.
But I had that, I want to run back to Atlanta from Athens, Georgia moment. So you reminded me of that when you said it just kind of came out.
And that means you did the right thing.
Yeah.
Because when you feel that fly all over you and you want to run, it usually has the most impact on people.
I remember the entrepreneur professor who didn't know me from, Adam's House Cat walks up and goes, well, guess it doesn't get any more real than that. So, because you know what I'm saying? Most people come and talk about business and money and interviewing and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So,
But that's so on par with your messaging.
Yeah.
Like that you don't want to be put in a construct, in a little box of what you should be. Like if we're not going to be humans in this, then what's the point? And it just feels so fake. So that's awesome. So why don't you share, for those who haven't heard, about your story that led up to the book?
Okay. Yeah, I'll do this as quickly as I can. So I grew up in a blue-collar, hard-working, I would say lower middle-class neighborhood in South Atlanta. Think Delta Mechanics, Coca-Cola factory, Ford factory, good, Army, Navy, carpenters. I mean, really good, hard-working, good people. Unfortunately for me, both inside and outside the home, I grew up around a lot of violence and abuse. And I was going to be the first person to go to college in my family. And unfortunately, I became the violence and abuse that happened to me throughout my life. And at 18 years old, committed a seriously violent crime, and was looking at 7 years in prison. And so as opposed to, I had accepted a full ride to the University of Georgia instead of going to the University of Georgia. Luckily, by the grace of God, it was my first offense. Mm-hmm. It was dropped to 2 heavy misdemeanors, but I was still sentenced to 2 years. And spent my 19th birthday incarcerated as opposed to being in university.
So not to cut you off, do you remember what it felt like when you first heard that was going to be your sentence?
Yeah, I mean, it's been 30 years.
Yeah.
But yeah, I can totally remember it. And I didn't know how any of this worked.
Yeah.
But literally they sentence you and 2 sheriffs come up to you and you're gone. That's it. You were free 1 minute before that. And then literally within 35 seconds, you're in a cell with 35 other people. So it sinks in really quick.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, it was really scary. So yeah, that was
yeah.
And I didn't know. I thought, well, that's where we're going to stay. And now then you get into a bus, and then they take you to where you're really going to stay, and it is significantly different than where you were a day before.
Yeah.
Which is next part of the story is during my visit to that rehabilitation facility. There's no rehabbing going on in those places. an African American gentleman decided to cross racial lines, which was really cool, and it's really rare.
Yeah.
Especially in South Atlanta, where I was by far the minority, and an 18-year-old skinny white kid. But a 40-year-old African American gentleman stepped across lines. He was a big old dude too. Called me Young Blood.
Young Blood.
His name was Tony, and he basically said, "You're not going to become a part of this revolving door system," which he had been in his whole life.
Gotcha. I was curious about that.
He had been his whole life, and based on the relationship we had after that, he's probably still involved in it. But talk about legendary. I mean, he did influence one young man to pick himself up and not be a part of that system. So that's technically a legendary life, right? And so, so with his guidance, with his accountability, with his love, when my time was up, I went to work for a nuclear waste container factory during the day. It was brutal work. Ended up costing me back surgery and hernia surgeries for $6 an hour. Going to community college in South Atlanta during the day. After about a couple of years, there's a whole bunch of stuff that happens in between that, but it was all good. I was just working hard and studying hard at night, and I've eliminated a lot of the negative forces from my life, including family, and ended up back at the University of Georgia. And one of the things I'm most proud of is I went from a jail cell to a giant financial consulting public accounting firm called Deloitte. It used to be called Deloitte & Touche then, but now it's called Deloitte, which I think now it's the largest firm on the planet. But with that being said, I was really proud of that. And I'll go real fast in this next part. Fast forward 15 years. I thought if I just worked harder than everybody else, because, I never really fit in. But if I worked hard, outmaneuvered or out-hustled them, used my intelligence to be smarter than they are, and my charisma that I learned from the street, my family, if I use that to get as successful and powerful in the status and the top of the firms as quick as I can, then I would be happy. And I did that. And so I didn't stay at Deloitte. I was recruited. I was a hot commodity, apparently, out to, it really was. It's kind of crazy, even to the end, because I just was a harder worker, charismatic. I mean, I was just wearing all these masks that place really, really liked. So here we are at 36 years old. I got a giant corner office. We're in a huge lodge. It's about the size of where we're sitting right now. TV hanging from all, we're literally looking down on Atlanta, shiny suits, cufflinks, nice car, pretty wife. And on the outside, he said, "Hey, this dude's got it all going on." But I never dealt with any of that stuff from my past. And what that looked like for me is I never could be Tommy. So I wore the important guy, powerful guy, life of the party, couldn't ask for help, bought all the drinks, coolest guy. And it was all arrogance. It was loud and insecure. And when the money, the power, the status didn't light me up, I turned to what I call the darkness, what a lot of men and women turn to, sex, drugs, alcohol, you name it, man. Just things that make me feel powerful, things that make me feel loved, things that make me feel seen and important.
In that short term.
And that, but it started innocently and then just kept spiraling and spiraling and spiraling. And the worse things got, the worse I hated myself. And you do even darker shit, which is kind of counterintuitive, here, but that wasn't thinking.
Right.
So at 36 years old, I woke up in a ditch in downtown Atlanta, half dressed, didn't know where my car was, and was looking at the blue sky thinking, holy shit, how did I get here? And probably a week before that, I was doing some big deal of some kind in some boardroom with some powerful people. And I just decided at that moment that I also felt it was life or death. If I kept this up, I was going to die.
Yeah.
And so I remember during that time that, and then I'll get to how I got into this, is I remember during that time, my wife and I were going through marriage counseling. Who knew why? Who knew? But I remember one of the marriage counselors saying, "Tommy, there's a place in Tennessee that can do more for you in 7 days than I can do in 10 years as a therapist or psychologist or whatever he was." And I remember him saying that. And so I went home, I told Heather, my wife.
That's a good selling point. Yeah.
And he goes, and I heard him then.
Yeah.
Because before then I couldn't feel, I didn't think there was anything wrong. Again, I thought Heather was the problem, not me, blah, blah, blah.
Just gonna go through the motions, do what you gotta do.
Yeah. And so I went home and told Heather everything, expecting when I got back from this place in Tennessee that she would be gone. And just started my journey on mental health, emotional health, physical health, spiritual health, leaning in and working on these muscles And here's something cool. So I made that my full-time job. I mean, I really made me, self-love, self-respect, self-confidence, self-esteem, my full-time job. And in 3 years, here's the tangible results that happened is I went from junior partner to senior partner to international practice leader to elected to the board and an owner of a giant firm in the Southeast United States. My money doubled, my network 10x, all the negative people were removed and all the people of light and goodness came in.
Yeah.
And my marriage went from horrible to rock solid.
Yeah.
Because she decided to do the work too.
Yep.
Because she wanted to know her part in all this. And she still does to this day. So, but intangibly, self-confidence, self-respect, not arrogance and insecurity anymore, but owning my own power, owning my own courage. And it's still a journey. I still struggle with things today, but I work my ass off on it. And that's when bankers, entrepreneurs, accountants, corporate executives, lawyers, advertising guys, I mean, all these dudes and gals from 28 to 70 started asking me for coffee or a beer to go for a walk. And they're like, hey man, you didn't give up your ambition and drive, but you're a whole lot happier. You're a whole lot healthier and you seem a whole lot more peaceful. How'd you do that? I'm like, well, here's what I did. And over time, I was just like, there is something here for me to go do. It took years and courage, but eventually I sold my equity in the firm, resigned my board seat, went to chase this building the legendary life movement, which this book came about all for, and it's a playbook on a lot of things that we'll go into on depth, but that was the journey from childhood to the book. So thank you for letting me share that.
Yeah, no,
that's a little more in depth than I normally get.
No.
We're looking at Lindsay behind the camera. We don't mind this. We don't have to be produced here, but hi, Lindsay.
We love it that you're here. She's the magic behind all of this.
I love that we're in the Mountaintop Lodge.
I know.
This is a place of healing.
Yeah.
It's a place of healing. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Up in the North Georgia mountains.
This has become one of my favorite spots. Like, you know, you walk into a place, you just feel like the energy. I'm very much like I don't mean this in like the woo-woo way, but like you can sense the energy in a room, and this cabin is a healing place for sure. No, I in your story, I love it. You know, you growing up and as a therapist, you know, work a lot with trauma and with belief systems and things like that. And we form these beliefs about ourselves, you know, and like so many of us, when we're younger, what happens to us on the external through experiences, through upbringing, through being bullied, all these external stuff is what we create as the belief of what we believe is inside versus the internal, like rewiring that to getting to know yourself again and who you really are, so that these external factors don't play a part in those negative beliefs about yourself anymore. You know, and because I remember when you were talking, I forget exactly what you said, but you're like, I don't even know why I was doing that. It's like, well, before you started doing all the work, you were still carrying those old beliefs about self. You know, like what do you think that was? Like for me, I've really had to work on and still work on the belief that I'm not lovable and I'm not important.
I think it was all of that. I think the words and a lot of different types of actions. You know, I was told by a lot of people that, you know, you're a piece of garbage, you're not enough, you know, why are you? I mean, it was just constantly spoke and other things into me that you weren't lovable, you weren't enough, you weren't valuable, you weren't worthy. And, you know, over time you start believing that story that's told to you.
Yeah.
And it gets down in your DNA of I'm not lovable, I'm not enough, I'm not safe. And you build these walls, you build these self-beliefs, you build these protectionism things that are served to help you survive, that aren't useful later down in life when you're not in those survival situations.
Which is why there's not fulfillment.
Right.
You can have all the bells and whistles and things in life,
and I had them.
Yeah, and yet still not be satisfied. You know, I hear these stories of people who finally win that Grammy, finally win that Emmy, whatever it is, and they think that that moment is going to change their life forever. And statistically, the months after that is when most people fall into their darkest depressions.
Yep.
Because it's not the thing, and as we know, happiness is it's a state, it's a feeling, it comes and goes. But fulfillment, contentment,
yep.
if there hasn't been work around your past, so many people want to put that in a box, and man, I mean, I was good at that. Let's just put that away, and that was another lifetime, another world. Let's pretend it didn't happen or exist. But in therapy land, this is where we say the past is present, whether you like it or not. And so you being able to have a chance to do that inside work, change that narrative,
totally.
Which
Still
is not easy. It's not easy. Like, what, for you, what's been, this is going to be a weird question. What's the worst part about doing the work?
Is that you're aware.
Yeah.
Sucks.
Right.
When I was numb and unconscious and had all the walls up and was just leaving a wake of destruction behind me, I didn't know any better. I'm not saying I wasn't accountable to my actions. I am in the personal accountability space, and I'm not in the victim space.
Yeah.
Eventually, you gotta use your the things that were done to you and the things you've done as a platform and not an anchor. So that's a whole different. I'm sure we'll get into that. But for me, once you become aware, you can't become unaware.
Yep.
And once you know that these feelings, these thoughts are coming from a place and a wiring that's in you and your DNA and your brain, you've got a choice to, once you're aware, if you continue doing those things, it's almost like a double negative. Or you can choose, because now you know, and you'll start shaming and guilting yourself into worse behaviors. Or you can choose to do something about it. Therapy, coaching, reading, meditating, gratitude. There's a billion different things out there to help you stand on it, use it as a platform, and work every single day to be a little bit stronger, to be a little more confident, to be more loving of yourself. And so I call it leading yourself. And so me, the toughest part is awareness. The second toughest part for all of us, I believe, and I'm just going to say it the way I like, stop giving a flying fuck what other people think.
Yeah.
Because they got their own stuff, they got their own issues. And if they're judging you or gossiping about you, trust me, that's a reflection on them and not you.
And they're not your people anyway.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And I think the third hardest part, and I'll move on, is I think when you start doing the work, the mental muscles, the emotional muscles, the spiritual muscles, if they're important to you, is, I don't know if it's ego, the enemy, a devil, energetic force, the yin to the yang. I don't know if it's Darth Vader. But there's something that fights back. Yep. And its sole job is to kill you and to kill you slowly. And when you start attacking that at first, it gets loud. Oh,
real loud. It's like backing an animal into a corner. Yeah. And it's going to fight back its hardest before you kill it.
Yep. And that animal for me has never gone away.
Yeah.
The rage, the anger, the insecurity, it gets quieter and quieter and quieter. Yeah. Now it rears its head. Yeah. But my wife and I have affectionately named that person Ike.
Ike.
For all those Ike out there, I'm sorry. This is what we chose to name mine, Ike. I think she had a kid bully her when she was a kid named Ike, so she named mine Ike.
Oh, I love it that you've named it.
Yeah, it was, and so and every now and then she'll go, is that you talking to you, or is that Ike talking to you? Is that Ike talking to me, or is that you talking to me? I'm like, ooh, yeah, that's a great point. And so, but it never goes away. Insecurity, the fear, the worry, the anger, but it does get a whole lot easier, and the light shines through a whole lot more than the darkness.
Yeah. No, that's amazing. Yeah, as a therapist, and I believe much more than just like the science behind things. I do believe in the faith and the spiritual element of it, and all of that for sure. But you're essentially, at first, you literally are fighting against yourself. Yeah. You form these neural pathways in your brain, and like out here we have a highway 400. It's like a highway 400. Just all the thoughts go down the same exact route every time. Every time you do something different, do something a little bit better, you put like one block down in your mind, a new little neural pathway, until eventually, that highway crumbles, and it's just a little detour here and there, and then you have this new roadmap in your mind. So then why do the work? What's the payoff if it's so hard at first?
Well, the truth is if you don't do anything, nothing's going to get better. It's only going to get worse.
Right.
And so we talked about this a little bit through the Choose Goodness stuff. I believe the only power we have in the entire world is our choices. And part of our choices is our attitudes and our actions and what is the next step we take. And the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting things to change. Well, go find the nearest mirror, and that's your problem and your solution. And what action are you going to choose today to be a little bit better than you were yesterday? Are you going to continue, the things you've always done, or you're going to move forward? And so for me, the payoff, I think that was the question, from money to success to happiness, none of these people are lucky. Yeah. Even the people who were born affluent, the data says they live the most fucked up lives statistically of anybody because of the pressure. And but all of the people you see, the greats, whether it's in business, in the medical world, in art, in music, in sports, is they get up and they do the reps every single day to be better in their crafts. Yeah. And money success comes from that. However, that's the confidence in the craft. That's the practicing the therapy. That's the, running the Legendary Life retreat, coaching, conference movement. That's the writing. But what we also have to do, the payoff, is to work on our self-esteem, to cultivate that self-love, that self-respect, that self-confidence. And so the payoff there is owning your own damn power. Yep. The payoff there is to not be a victim of your circumstance and what's been done to you or what you've been told. Not expecting a politician to take care of you. Not to stand with self-love so that you can love others. To lead yourself so that you can lead others. To respect yourself so that you can respect others. And when you respect yourself, you start having more empathy, compassion. You start standing in graceful power. You start standing with self-confidence and self-love. And at the end of the day, it's about courage and owning real power. And so that's the payoff. So if you do the reps in your craft and you just work and work and work it, success, money will come to you. And if you just do the reps every single damn day to work hard on yourself, the happiness, fulfillment, peace of mind, presence, and grace at the end of the day.
Preach it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Got pretty passionate there.
Yeah.
Even looked into the camera.
That's right. That was good. That's good. And you're being a victim if you're making excuses.
Hey, somebody else. Yep. That person, that politician, that group.
Some people don't even know they're in victim mentality. There's been times that I'm totally being the victim to my life, and then I get called out on it. I'm like, yeah, I'm fucking making excuses again, aren't I?
Totally. And you know this. Our 24-hour news networks, left and right, tell you you're a victim, right or left. Yep. You're a victim, you're a victim, you're a victim, hate that person, and these people will save you. Bullshit. Yep. These are high-paid actors reading you a script to sell advertising.
That's why I don't watch
and we're believing it. So if you're watching left news, you're a victim. If you're watching right news, somebody somewhere is trying to take something with you. And follow us, hate them, we'll sell you advertising, and it'll all be better.
Yeah, it's all about blame. Yep.
Blame.
Yep, absolutely.
We're getting told we're victims, we start believing it.
Yeah. Yep. Well, inundated with all the messaging.
Social media as well.
So I don't know why this question keeps sticking out in my mind. So I have to ask it, and then we'll start moving on to the book. If you were to run into that African American guy and you could put your arm around him, what would you want to say to him now?
Thank you. Yeah, it would be a sincere gratitude.
Yeah.
I would love to know how he's doing.
Yeah.
We kept in touch. It would be just, sometimes thank you is enough.
Yeah.
When you really mean it. And I really mean it. And it's, not to get too in the spiritual realm, but something bigger than us was happening there.
Oh, absolutely.
It wasn't luck. It was fate. And, be a serious, I hope he would be now late 60s, God willing, he's still with us. But there was a point in time after we kept in touch, I would say at least a couple of years. That's the way I remember it. I mean, it's been 30 years. But it was clear to me as the more I worked at removing myself, the more he couldn't. It was just who he was and where he was from, and he had to make choices that were best for him, for his survival. And it was clear to me that he was, and I think we both together decided to move on. I don't think it was just, or it just fizzled out. But he certainly, since him though, I never had any real strong male mentorship. And I had the exact opposite of strong male mentorship, and whatever the exact opposite of female mentorship, and that's a whole different thing, is so I never felt safe. And so for him to step in and make me feel safe, make me seen, heard, and we always say that Heather and Tony was his name, and others could love me when I couldn't love myself. Yeah. It was really cool. Yeah. It's really, really beautiful. Yeah. It would just be a serious, and I tell him I love him because I do. Yeah. I think about him often. Yeah.
Yeah. It's one of those things.
I can remember like he was here, and it's been 30 years. Yeah. I can remember the conversations we had like it was yesterday. Yeah.
Yeah.
And he was a bad dude, man. He was a dude.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it just goes to show that, while people have done horrific things and horrible things and all of that, there's, if people allow themselves, there's still that goodness that is in there, and then there's always grace enough for everybody. So cool. Who knows, maybe one day or on the other side of this, get to see him again.
Maybe you'll read the book.
Maybe you'll read the book. Yeah.
He's in it.
Yeah.